What I'd like to do tonight, just very briefly, is trying to set the scene for why we welcome such a book and why it's so important, and it really is a must-read for everybody. We would say that Chinese companies tend to be extremely well informed, and they do their homework, and they move very fast, learn very fast, and are becoming extremely sophisticated by the day. In the UK, we think that perhaps still a few people do not realize the pace of change in China and the degree of sophistication in that space. So we hope that this book will help people here in the UK and elsewhere in the West to understand better the changing landscape of innovation.
George and I are delighted to be here. Of course, he is here. I'm passing through. But it's very appropriate, I think, that we launch a book on innovation in this place, because the Imperial College has such a fine reputation for its work on the frontiers of technology and science. And what I think we would like to suggest to you is that to think of Chinese companies as just copiers is a mistake today. They're very capable within China. They have developed the capabilities to innovate in China. Most of that has been incremental, yes. But you have to learn to innovate incrementally before you can do things really radically. And so the big question then is, how do they do this? And that's what George is going to talk about.
So I'm going to focus a lot of my part talking about the 10 ways in which Chinese companies are different from Western companies in how they do innovation. Recently, they launched the world's first 3-temperature level refrigerator. So instead of not just the ice box, but the regular compartment, there's an in-between compartment with a temperature between the two, designed to store the food that is the most important to Americans. What do you think that is? Ice cream. But it took a foreign company, a Chinese company, to have this insight into American consumer behavior. More interesting is the CEO of Broad. I photographed this while he was in the office. He proudly said to me, I am responsible for 95% of the innovations in my company. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. I was really struck by this because no Western CEO would dare to say this even if they thought it. This bus can carry 1,200 people, will not block the traffic, and they're planning to install this instead of underground systems for 1/5 of the cost. And again, this is very typical Chinese innovation. It's very engineering intensive, and it's also manufacturing intensive. And actually the third aspect is very Chinese. You need a top-down government to dictate that you're going to put something in like this. Can you imagine trying to put this in London? How many years would it take to do that?
China evolved so quickly once it started on its path in 1981, when it had no basis of industrialization before that, whereas Japan did. And so I think we shouldn't underestimate China.
Yeah, the Chinese are not so good at strategy because they're very pragmatic. And for 5 years, I've been teaching a course on strategy execution to sort of mid to senior level executives. And everyone in the class complains to me that, yes, while we're executing the strategy, within 3 to 6 months, my boss has changed the strategy. So they don't have the discipline yet of really focusing on the strategy. And that's because they've been able to succeed, I think, by being very pragmatic and jumping around.
I don't think that we're going to see radical reform of the state-owned sector quickly. It's something that's always on the agenda, but it never seems to happen. There's so many vested interests, I think, that make it very difficult to happen. If anybody can make it happen, I think it's the current government. But whether they have the incentive to do that is not clear.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.